Now, this anime versus manga video is very different than our usual one. You see, the anime thus far has covered the final version of the manga that is released in the physical volume. But for some reason, in this fight, in particular in this episode, we are covering a older version of this fight. See, this fight was rewritten and redrawn by One and Murata, the artist and writer of One Punch Man, for some reason. So if some of you are confused, I'm going to be doing a comparison to the original version, and I'll do a video during the week about all the differences between those two versions. So for now, we're going to be covering the anime versus the original manga. Let's get into it. So the first difference I noticed is that we're in this temple, and it's fine. It's 100% more or less accurate. But the shot is slightly different in terms of its positioning. Usually we get a much wider panel and we're taken from behind the two kids running. The corridor in the distance glowing with some form of light at the end of the corridor. But instead, in the anime, we get a shot of them running towards us. And instead of being at an angle, it's dead straight down the corridor. In the manga, this kid has a thought bubble, thinking back to the fight that he just witnessed between G5 and Child Emperor's dog robot with a blank background. But here we have the background that is present within the scene that this shot is taking place in, and it's a straight on shot instead of a slight angled. So in the manga we get to see Child Emperor running with a good bit of motion, you know, but in the anime it's very stiff. Child Emperor is running with his hands to his chest, and we don't get to see his legs move because they're cut out from the shot. This is probably done to save time and money, because we all know this production was a nightmare. Honestly, I see very little difference with this shot here, only the fact that the spoiled little brat isn't as exhausted in the anime as he is in the manga. In the anime, we cut to this shot early, and that's because they've cut out a panel. See, they're supposed to be running along and a monster is about to ambush Child Emperor. Then we see blood splatter, leaving it up to our anticipation as to what happened. Then it's revealed that Child Emperor's, robotic arms coming out of his backpack have just impaled this beast, and he hasn't even looked in its direction. However, we skip this in the anime and instead have 3 different shots of the kids running while Child Emperor explains, cutting straight to this shot of the 2 kids running through the corridor. Now, in the manga, the kids are actually just outlines in this for some particular reason. No idea why. So here we actually get the models of the characters running. This shot of them walking into the new room is entirely original to the anime. Instead, we cut straight to this shot of the spoiled little brat reacting to Phoenix Man's corpse. This shot is more or less one-to-one with its manga counterpart, with only minor changes being the details in which the wounds on Phoenix Man's body. There's a bit of censorship. This might not be down to, time restrictions like many of the other less detailed sections in this story, but one thing is clear, that this is censored. He's supposed to have lacerations all over his body, showing where these blood bladders are coming from. Then after this shot, we get a close-up of Child Emperor, which isn't in the manga, and then we cut back to the close-up that is in the manga. They use this close-up in the anime to explain that the spoiled little brat knows who Dopey Bird is, which is a surprise to Child Emperor, and the shot that he gets this revelation in is slightly different. He's facing the wrong direction, and we actually get to see background with far more detail in his character being presented. Then with Child Emperor's verbal reaction, we get a different shot. Child Emperor is still walking away. He hasn't stopped because he really doesn't care about Phoenix Man and does not see him as an issue anymore. And the kid is far more closely walking and following behind him. Never stopped walking either. For some reason in the anime, they've just stopped in front of the corpse to talk a little. The characters and background on display when they're talking about Dopey Bird or Phoenix Man's background is slightly different. The characters are far more chibi with differing detail. Phoenix Man himself, for some reason, has a human arm and a wing pointing upwards, while in the manga, he's just himself, just, a chubbier looking version of him, I suppose. The elephant also has stitches in the manga, with no pants or trousers or hat, but in the anime, he has all of these things. The rabbit is 10 million times more cursed in the anime than he is in the manga. The bear is more or less the same, except his dungarees are really different. Turtle is a far more realistic style than in the manga, and we also don't get to see the smile on the turtle shell. But the girl is the biggest difference in this. The girl in the show is a child with a far less revealing costume. The anime also adds this close-up to help the pacing. Child Emperor in the manga has a feeling of dread that is very visible on his face, also being helped with the background. I don't know, I feel like this image is starting to put 2 and 2 together. Child Emperor in this particular panel feels like he's realizing what might just happen, but in the anime, he's far more tame. A face basically unreadable, unknown emotion. This animation is also very different. See, in the manga, we just get him saying, hello, and then the birds burning with text bubbles to the right. But here, we get a close-up of the birds burning, and then him saying, hello, as he pops up from the center of the screen, with the animation continuing behind him. Also, something that is very minor, but in the manga, when the bird is getting electrocuted, we actually get to see power lines, showing that he's getting electrocuted by power lines, something that is not in the anime. I actually quite like this angle here, showing Phoenix Man's corpse being the thing that contrasts the shot more than anything else by how dark it really is, compared to the immensely bright background. I believe that this was done mainly because we're supposed to see Child Emperor realizing that this could be an issue. These two shots are slightly different in the manga, not by detail, but only by angle. This shot here of Phoenix Man's corpse starting to glow is not in the manga at all, as we cut straight to this realization panel of reacting to the shining light from behind them. We don't cut to this blast of light until we see Phoenix Man's foot step down, and it's from a slightly wider angle than it is in the manga. The positioning of Phoenix Man's arm is slightly different than it is in the manga. They decide to insert the foot stepping here rather than before. There is a loss in detail in the design, but that is to be expected from an anime adaptation. But more or less, this design is pretty damn close to the original. As I said, in areas, his design comes across more as fluffy than, actually having feathers like in the manga, because holy crap, Murata went all out with this design. But with that being said, it is pretty damn close. This shot here of them reacting to Phoenix Man spawning in is entirely original to the anime. This sequence of Child Emperor's bag exploding the top off in order for him to have a bird lime shotgun is entirely anime original. The only part of it that is in the manga is simply the pose of him shooting it. This wind-up animation we get of Phoenix Man blocking the blast is only in the anime. In the manga, all we get is a flat panel of him blocking the blast. We miss a close-up of Child Emperor reacting to this fact before they duck for cover using the umbrella. How they choose to display them dodging the fire is vastly different than it is in the manga. Simply fire being all around the dome instead of being pushed up against it from the direction of Phoenix Man like it is in the manga. This animation or sequence of him kicking the barrier is entirely original to the anime. Instead, we just see Child Emperor dashing off immediately with a hole visible in the barrier. This kid usually shouts this to Child Emperor simply with a panel facing him, but here they decide to show Child Emperor running away from the child while he gives this reaction with Phoenix Man in the background. Not present in the manga at all, nor is this front-forward facing running animation from Child Emperor, also anime original. We miss this panel of Birdman's reaction to all of this, which is, he does basically nothing. And I gotta say, this sequence of Child Emperor pulling out his sword, shield, and arms is pretty cool. The fire hitting Child Emperor's barrier is taken from a vastly different angle. Not to mention multiple times in the manga that Murata forgot the Child Emperor is supposed to be holding a plasma sword. This shot here is vastly different than it is in the manga too. We don't actually get to see the barrier visibly in front of Child Emperor in the manga, but here we do in the anime. And they've corrected the fact that Murata forgot to put in the plasma sword. This panning shot of Phoenix Man isn't in the manga, as we just simply launch straight into his attack. Not to mention the anime skipped over a panel of Child Emperor monologuing, giving us more information on the quadruple layer barrier that he's put up for these flames and Phoenix Man. However, this collision, this break in this attack are vastly more detailed in the manga. Although we get just Phoenix Man putting his wings in front of himself, blasting off in a straight line, destroying those barriers, and then this fucking beautiful panel. They also skip over this panel of the Phoenix dash towards Child Emperor, instead cutting straight to this panel here of his close-up shot and the impact into his sword, showing that it fires him back, hitting him in the ribs and launches Child Emperor into a wall. Now the wall is very different than it is in the manga. See, in the panel we get to see the kid in the bubble behind while Phoenix Man is recoiling from the attack, sliding towards them, but Child Emperor launches into the corner of a corridor rather than just a plain Jane wall all by himself, instead showing the kid's reaction in a close-up like this. Here we skip over a shot of Phoenix Man that is taken from the side rather than front on straight away, replacing it with a zoomed in shot of him talking. Now using a similar shot to the panel they skipped over before. This is more or less the same, just simply the angling of the shot is slightly different. Child Emperor is supposed to be in the center of the screen, while Phoenix Man's monologuing also at the center of the screen, but just further above him. But because, they have to change things from the anime to the manga, they've decided to make this more horizontal. A bit of a golden ratio going on. on here. These few sequences or shots are actually really close to the anime. The only main difference I could honestly point out is that his foot isn't supposed to be like this. He's not supposed to be on one knee. He's supposed to be on all fours, crying. His watch is slightly lost a bit of detail, but the rest of the sequence adds a lot more with its background and other effects. We miss 2 panels of monsters reacting to the fact that a wall is starting to be drilled through. Said drilling through the monster, evaporating him. A-class and below heroes reacting to the seismic activity with 3 different panels, only then to cut to this shot, which is a different angle in the manga. Here we pan into each one, which, you know, makes a interesting camera movement and a panning shot that actually makes sense for once, but is far more zoomed out in the manga, showing all the visual information immediately. This sequence of them showing how it opens up and how it actually moves is so interesting. This is why you want anime, to see the transition points between the panels. Murata's art is so friggin' detailed, but sometimes you're left wondering, how did that actually transition from one panel to the next? And this displays that beautifully. The only difference I could really spot with this is that there's less rubble here when the mech is being assembled, and then when he shouts, "Take this," there's no holograms visible, which there is in the manga. This sequence here of shining through the smoke and the hand going forward to punch Phoenix Man is entirely anime original and actually isn't in the manga. Instead, in the manga, we just get a swiping huge hand swat Phoenix Man out from this smoke. We see his reaction to this impact, and then from a far more zoomed out angle and perspective, see him shoot through this wall and then a pillar. In the anime, we get him breaking through the wall from a far more close-up perspective, and then breaking through another thing, which wasn't very visually obvious to us, to be honest. It wasn't too clear as to what he broke through there. That is until he bounces off another pillar, going through it and bashing right into the wall. Instead of getting this shot of Phoenix Man falling to one knee as rubble falls behind him, we get an immediate kick of the foot to add more perspective to the size of the mech that's about to be revealed. But with all that being said, the shot of the mech being revealed, the full panning shot, is vastly different than it is in the manga. See, in the manga we get this. So a few things are different. The perspective is entirely different. The 2 pillars that Phoenix Man went through are completely destroyed now as Child Emperor enters the corridor. Not to mention, the mech is an entirely different design. Now, there was actually 2 versions of this particular mech, and this is the original design. But for some reason in the anime, they used the final design of the mech. For some reason, they've decided to adapt the original fight, just not the original mech. This shot here of Child Emperor in his cockpit adds a lot more detail, at least to the original shot, revealing this setup. Not to mention, Child Emperor's visor is slightly different than it is in the manga, at least initially. We're supposed to see Phoenix Man dusting off his shoulder before we see this reaction shot of the kid. And this reaction shot of Child Emperor is far more zoomed in than it is in the manga, also without the holograms or the original visor. This is where they decide to add the shot of Phoenix Man getting up and wiping off his shoulder, alongside the monologue that happens 2 panels after that initial panel. Once again, something I've noticed is that the holograms are not visual, at least in the same way as they are in the manga, and Child Emperor's expressions really don't display the situation he's in. He's so calm here. But let's be honest, Phoenix Man called his bluff frame 1. That is something to be concerned about. And the manga version of Child Emperor is very concerned. But the anime he's just kind of chilling. We missed this close-up shot of the mech and Child Emperor overlaying on top of one another. We cut straight to the corridor chase scene, where Phoenix Man flies in from the right to the center of the screen, rather than from the left to the center of the screen. This shot, here's a little bauble on his backpack. Now we're going to cut to the secondary version of this fight. Something I should have mentioned even earlier is that this fight does have 3 versions. One with one designed mech and one with this newer designed mech. The design of the mech that makes it into the final version. So we're right now moving from a version of this fight that has the original mech to one that has the new mech but isn't the final version, if that makes sense. Anyway, let's get into it. So this shot here of the shield coming in is a slightly different angle than it is in the manga. See, in the manga, we see the elbow come out and this motion starts to form the shield. One thing I will say about the shield, I noticed in this particular shot, is that the shield is supposed to be a sort of hologram of these 2 blades spinning, projecting the shield. I'm not sure how the science behind that works, but that's the way it's supposed to be. But in the anime, they simply just have it be a hologram that comes out of a little hole in his arm. But the mech robot, like, thrusters look incredible. The mech robot, thruster design looks great. Comes out pretty good and shoots off clean as hell. Slightly different design than in the manga, but I'm not complaining. Some details lost in this shot here. Not too many though to complain about. His blade is supposed to have crackling detail of, crackling energy shooting off it. Phoenix Man's, I think they're called like their tassels or whatever, like the parts of his tail are positioned vastly different than they are in the anime. Not to mention his wings on his arms are not as big as they are in the manga. Some of the holograms are still missing from the interior of Child Emperor's cockpit. Not to mention his headgear is now closer to the version that's in the manga, but still not one-to-one. The homing missiles were great though. Positioning in the camera was different, but that's because it's an anime. We got this cool panning perspective shot. The missiles also don't spread out as much and don't fly in very interesting paths compared to its manga. And the shot where we see Phoenix flares, because it's animated, looks vastly different too. First we see a shot from him from below doing a twirl and a dash, shooting off of flares. Then a close-up frontward facing shot. Instead, in the manga, we only get a shot of Phoenix Man flying in a straight line, and it's just says text saying Phoenix flare. Like, it isn't actually even all that visual that he is shooting off flares. If there was no text there telling me what happened, I would never have known. I would have assumed they just hit him and, then blown up, creating the cloud of smoke. This shot is a slightly different angle than it is in the manga. This close-up shot is not in the manga at all. This shot here in the manga has Child Emperor gliding through the air, but his feet are touching the ground. So he's sort of like skating with thrusters as he attempts to strike Phoenix Man while he transforms. Now, interestingly enough, they let Phoenix Man show off, dashing around at top speed around Child Emperor's mech right here like this, and then Child Emperor's reaction, only then to reveal that Phoenix Man is in a new form. See, in the manga, they make it very clear. Boom! He glows, then he changes, and this is the panel, huge panel by the way, showing that he has changed. But I kind of like that in the anime, he says he's going to change, and then the next thing we see is vastly different movement than we saw from before, and then a close-up of his costume change slightly. I personally do still prefer the manga, but I think that this is a fine way to do it. If only JC didn't struggle with cuts so much, I feel like this would have come across far more organically than it did here. Before we see all these impacts on Child Emperor's mech exterior, we're supposed to see a close-up of the inside and the AI voice talking to us. And they use one panning shot for all the impacts rather than the two panels that are in the manga. This is one of the simplest designs for Phoenix Man in the anime and manga, so I honestly just can't really complain. It's like basically perfect, just missing one thing, which is the sort of like eyebrow feathers that come from his eye. We're not supposed to be this close up to Child Emperor's eye. In the manga, we just get a very, very distant shot of him firing off something that we can see because they're closer to us in terms of perspective, being little bravers or bravies, but it's way more organic in the anime compared to the manga here, using one of the little bravers as a transition point for the next panel. JC Staff actually made a good cut. What? Now, I said I wasn't going to complain about design, but here we are, I guess. Phoenix Man's wings in this form are supposed to be black, and his arm wings are supposed to be way bigger. The arm wing on his right arm isn't even present like at all for some reason. And we're supposed to get far more of him dodging the little bravers rather than just, him reacting to the fact that they're dashing around him. It kind of looks really weird that he's just, a PNG floating there. They don't all blast him like this in the manga. In the manga, he simply just gets fed up of having to deal with them and transforms within 2 panels. He only gets shot after he transforms, which is actually pretty interesting. I think it makes a pretty cool transition for the blasts to hit him and use the light and the impact of that to transform him. I think it's actually a pretty interesting idea. If only the design didn't look jank as hell. The shot on when he blows up all the little guys is slightly different than it is in the manga. Smoke is supposed to explode outwards from this perspective rather than really simple layout that they do here in the anime. I'm just gonna put down 5 differences here just because if you look at the 2 panels, like they're so different, and the design of the characters lost so much. It's just lost a lot of detail. It is so unclear as to what the hell is happening here. Like, see this? What is this? You just cannot see that this is the mech's elbow, even though it's hollow, stabbing down the sword. Like, it is so unclear as to what's happening here. They also feel the same way because there's so much effects going on. This is not it whatsoever. cutting straight to the close-up where they're able to like convey what the hell's actually going on, even though that should have been so visually clear with the previous shot. We're supposed to see Child Emperor dashing towards the kid as Hawkman continuously shoots off this barrage, only being able to block it once he reaches a position between him and Phoenix Man. But instead in the anime they just cut to him bashing through a wall, putting up a shield, which is a loss of an entire page worth of movement and dynamicism. So to be honest, I'm going to be putting a brutal 10 differences for that, because look at this page and tell me that that isn't a lot of detail lost. Phoenix Man's flight path, although correct, it isn't really given enough time for us to appreciate that movement. Him appearing, I feel like it happens too quick, not that it's poorly animated. This shot of Phoenix Man's internal monologue is actually supposed to be happening while he's dashing around, not when he's hiding behind a pillar. This electrical current and rune is supposed to be summoned by little robots, but it's not supposed to be summoned by little robots on the floor. It's supposed to be on the left hand side wall. This shot here of him raising his fist is supposed to have Phoenix Man at the bottom of it reacting to it, and then when you get that close-up of him, you immediately see him changing form and shouting while looking up. Credit where credit is due, the holograms in the background here are present, and they are pretty goddamn detailed if you ask me, and they're not in the manga. We're supposed to get a reaction shot of the kid in the hand, you know, getting absolutely dramatized by what he's seeing. Also, one of the robots flying off in the distance because of the impact, and a far more distant shot of the room that they're in with a detailed statue of a monster, and just overall perspective that adds a lot of gravitas to the fight. I will say it's far more obvious to us as manga readers as to what's happening here, mainly because we get two shots, one of a arm melting from the heat and then a close-up being like, yeah, it's really melting. But here we kind of just see a red glow. It could mean a number of things because we don't actually get to see the texture of the hand moving, not to mention the like 90 layers of effects are making it very difficult to see what's visually going on. I love this added anime original close-up of the Phoenix Man getting absolutely pounded and he's just screaming. I don't know, the voice acting really got me here. They went for a different approach, showing that they've blasted through multiple layers of the building. You know, dum 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 dum. Where, to be honest, it isn't actually very obvious that that's what's happening in the manga. Only when we see the big hole left behind by their impacts do we notice that he's falling. So I believe that the anime did a good job in conveying the motion here. They skip over a panel here and show the bridge same angle that they used when they showed off the flashy flash fight, telling us that this is the arena in which they fought. His transformation sequence is also slightly different than it is in the manga. The manga, we can see, holy crap, he's in tatters, but he's glowing, so he's gonna reincarnate. But in the anime, that is just, you know, censored a little bit, I suppose. He's just like a black blob. So we're supposed to see a big splash and Child Emperor's mech alongside, you know, Phoenix Man falling into the water. Then a close-up of the feet hitting the ground. Instead, in the anime, we just see the feet hitting the ground. We get this close-up of Child Emperor before we see the shot of the mech. And they use that shot of the mech to transition to an external, or like far more zoomed out, shot of the mech, showing all the bodies of all the other monsters. They also skip over the fact that the barrier protecting the kid is starting to break and water is starting to leak in, instead cutting straight to Child Emperor finding Flashy Flash's tracker that he dropped during the fight in the previous episode. I feel like this shot doesn't convey the same speed, impact, or even that he is pulling out some form of saber or sword compared to the manga. Like, simply looking at the two, you can see there's a lot of, you know, detail missed in terms of choreography in the fight. This is a anime original pose here, because usually we just get speed lines and black background, but here we get a visual to go along with it, and honestly I kind of like it. Even though it is just a silhouette and smoke effects, it conveys a lot more, you know, visual information than speed lines and a black screen. And here we lose a kind of sequence where the chisel hits the smoke cloud and you see only an arm, and then the full reveal of Phoenix Man's new design. Instead, here we just see the impact immediately into Phoenix Man's new design. What we've seen in JC Staff's production so far, there's a few inconsistencies in the design for sure, but honestly, I actually fucking love it. Mainly because they're finally drawing the feathers, like the actual feathers, or maybe it's at least becoming far more clear
that there's actual feathers in his design. The shapes of the wings for sure are different. These are more angelic, where, you know, I know that's supposed to be part of it. We still don't get the wings on his arms, nor the tail wings on his like main set of wings. Also, in the manga, it's not called Brilliant Eagle, it's called Phoenix Diamond Eagle mode. They split this into a panning shot that actually looks like pretty friggin' good, in my opinion. Also, in this close-up here, we lose a bit of detail of water actually splashing on like his head, reacting to him, and then going down his face. We do get water spurting inside, it just doesn't react with him in any capacity. In this same shot, we're supposed to get a reaction from the kid, but instead that kid's reaction is voiced in this shot of Child Emperor contemplating. And we get this heroic pose in the manga of him on one knee with, you know, his sword in his hand, which they skip over in the anime. Then we're also supposed to get a visual of thread shooting through pins, then a close-up shot of Phoenix Man, and then this shot of Phoenix Man. But in the anime, we cut straight to this shot and use it as a panning shot for that dialogue, activating his ability, and then cut to the manga panel, which is this one, adapting it basically one-to-one. The monsters that are crawling up his leg are far different, once again, mainly just because of anime-friendly designs and stuff, but regardless, they're different. I won't mark one down for every single goddamn one, but I'll say it's one difference. Something that I love is that in the previous shot, we saw that he was holding his spear. So in the anime, they show him dropping the spear because of this reaction to the monsters, which is actually great. I love that. Keeping consistency throughout the episode, which is something Murata once again forgot about. He just lost it. He just doesn't have it anymore. However, we're supposed to cut to shot of the swing, only using the manga panel for the impact of that swing. Now, they don't do the Israel star for the shield for some reason in the anime. I don't know why they wouldn't do that. Instead, they, you know, just cut to him jumping up with the sword from this perspective, which is, you know, new to the anime, and have him cut up the monster into tiny little bit of pieces, rather than throwing the Star of David and chopping up all of them at once. Now, to be fair, this could be censorship, and it would be censorship that I would personally understand. But at the same time, I would have liked to see him throw maybe just a normal kunai or something, because the scene was really, really cool. We're supposed to get an internal shot of Child Emperor freaking out because there's so many goddamn zombies on top of him and all around him, and then a shot of those zombies crawling all over his armor. Instead, we cut straight to this shot of Child Emperor cutting away at the massive zombies running towards him. In this close-up shot of the spoiled kid's reaction, we're supposed to see the light still radiating off Phoenix Man, and we're just supposed to see more of the barrier and the spoiled kid. We're missing holograms in this shot again. He's not supposed to just be charging through the hordes right here. He's supposed to be blocking blasts and slicing them up. Then he's supposed to start dashing towards him. This shot of Phoenix Man is supposed to be at a slightly different angle. And here we're supposed to get a shot of Hellfire and Gale attacking Child Emperor's head, bashing that shit in their monster forms. And Child Emperor reacts as like, God damn it, these two kill Flashy Flash, that's crazy. And Phoenix Man reacting to the fact, oh, they died here, that's pretty sad. Those are the guys who are pretty strong. As they beat the crap out of Child Emperor, absolutely eviscerating them. The robots fly down with, might I add, the original design of the Child Emperor mech. Interesting. Then the close-up of Child Emperor. Once again, the emotion sort of missing from his face, along with the holograms and the kind of like armored element of the cockpit. The animation of the drill hitting him isn't exactly what I would have expected, mainly because we get to see the full drill and rocket at quite a big distance away compared to its manga counterpart. And we're supposed to get a close-up of him trying to fight off the drill. But instead, we cut straight to our little Child Emperor Juniors flying towards the kid to save him, and cut straight to his soccer shot. Instead of showing the slicing attack movement of Phoenix Man's, attack, they simply give us a sound effect with an impact frame and show all the rubble falling apart. Then we get a close-up of Child Emperor's timer saying 13 seconds, but in the manga, it says 5 seconds. While in the manga, we're supposed to get Phoenix Man flying towards the spoiled little brat first. The sequence for that, electrical, maximum output punch is different. See, he's not supposed to punch. He's supposed to just say maximum output, and the electrical discharge from that is supposed to kill all the zombies around him, and that's supposed to be a Gigavolt Smash. But instead, in the anime, he actively punches. As Child Emperor is taking off in his rocket form, we're supposed to see that the mech is kind of blowing up and being destroyed. But instead, we just get, a rocket takeoff, which, to say the least, is less detailed in the anime compared to the manga. Also, we don't get to see the animation of it flying out of the water. We just cut to it being out of the water. And the positioning of this attack from Phoenix Man is vastly different than it is in the manga. But arm coming back and transforming into sidearm mode is pretty damn cool, if you ask me. Getting electrified back in, animated really quite well, actually. Back to the original design of the mech. I'm not sure as to why. I think it might just be because I'm reading the wrong part of the manga, but you know, that's what it is. We're supposed to see him charge up his Millennium Emperor Nova, which is clearly just a Kamehameha, by the way, with many different panels and different perspectives. But instead, we see the impact immediately of Phoenix Man getting blasted away like Frieza. We do miss a few panels of the blast shooting through the Monster Association, but for the most part, I'm very happy with how it looked. We missed the reaction of the A-class heroes that are on the surface as they just see a massive bloody explosion that could have goddamn killed them. I'm just gonna put a point for every single panel that we missed. Okay, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We're supposed to see the mech fall to one knee before the close-up of the spoiled little brat. This shot is not supposed to be of the perspective of the kid from behind the barrier. It's supposed to have the kid in the barrier reacting, sure, but we're supposed to actually be able to see the detail of the mech in its destroyed form. This close-up of the kid doesn't exist in the manga. This hologram is supposed to come off a like watch sort of thing on Child Emperor's wrist, and the whole mecha armor cockpit is vastly different than it is in the manga. So I don't hate this shot in the anime, but just look at this manga panel. Look at it. Oh my. Oh. So I know the anime tried, but dang. Same can be said for this, although I do think that the anime got far closer to replicating this shot. And this shot, really quite good actually. And this shot, pretty damn good. Maybe it ain't so bad. We're supposed to get a shot of this boy little brat reacting, and then Child Emperor's, cocky reaction. As we can see in the manga, there's far more detail in like the lower part of the apparatus that he's in, but the upper part has more detail in the anime for some reason. For this shot, they combine two panels together in order to convey the same information. So in the manga, they show that Child Emperor is just clinging to the top of this jaw, which is crazy, by the way, which isn't in the anime at all. Instead, we cut straight to the jaw shutting and Phoenix Man's reaction to being in there, and then him immediately cutting up the mech. We're supposed to get a shot of the spoiled brat's reaction, then his little robot's being cut up, then Child Emperor falling back as his backpack shield is also destroyed, but he is safe, with a bit of blood cutting into his shoulder. But instead, they remove that shield. Child Emperor doesn't have any blood coming out because you can't hurt a kid with blood, blah, 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 censorship. But they do show the mechs being destroyed in the same shot. In the manga, the rubble falls onto the two ninjas that wake up, are alive, and have their own free will. They just gotta reset. And they, react to the situation with, Now, this attack he does is done at a different angle in the manga, but to be fair, I can see why they didn't. I think that the angle they took in the manga was much better. It actually very clearly showed that he's wearing a, chainsaw boot, which Jesus is cool. But in the anime, they kind of take, this perspective shot, which is a pretty interesting shot, but it doesn't visually make it clear what he's wearing, which is a chainsaw goddamn boot, by the way. I really think that they didn't give this enough time because, yes, he is literally chainsawing this guy's balls. It needed more time, man. It's cinema. And this reaction shot that isn't in the manga, by the way, I love of him begging for mercy after the fight they just had is chef's kiss. One Punch Man. 100% all the way. Now we cut to the ninjas waking up that was missing previously. I think it's way funnier for it to be here because before it was when Phoenix Man was winning and it looked like a relatively even fight, but here it is literally a child abusing a man. So Tama's scene is pretty much one-to-one with the manga. Love that. They miss a few panels here for censorship reasons, which I for once can actually understand because although it's blurred, it is clear that these two ninjas not only are monster ninjas, but they have monster hogs. Okay. So yeah, very understandable as to why they kind of reframed these. So look how dinky their stuff is. Look how dinky their wieners are in the manga compared to the anime. That is crazy. Cutting back to the Child Emperor fight, or resolution of a fight. We're supposed to see Child Emperor's Tickle robot jump back on top of him because Phoenix Man has been defeated. This shot here is not anime original, but they add far more detail. They keep Phoenix Man down on the ground and they keep the kid actually talking. They keep the spoiled brat talking to him. But in the manga, it's simply just Child Emperor in a white background. They add two more anime original shots here, then another one of him recording a message for other S-Class heroes, and rubble falling down from the fight that just happened. Just letting us
does know, yeah, this shit's over, bro. Things have chilled out a lot. And then Zombie Man responding, which is something that doesn't happen in the manga, but it does happen in the final version of the manga. And it's a part that lends a lot of character development between Zombie Man and Child Emperor, which is something that they build on later in the show. So it's important to at least have simple dialogue between them, showing that Zombie Man, even though Child Emperor is a kid, Zombie Man has respect for Child Emperor and treats him just like any other S-Class hero. So this entire sequence, which is multiple shots, is entirely anime original, but just a version of something that came before. And when Child Emperor asks him this question, the visuals that are given in the manga are not followed in the anime at all. And that's every difference I could spot between its anime and its manga. There was this many differences in this video, which is, Jesus, that's quite a lot. This has been a long one. But with that being said, I'm going to do a video on the differences between the redraws and the main timeline manga-wise, so you guys can see that, because it might have been a little confusing. And please, for the love of God, just subscribe, okay? You watched this 20-ass minute video, you liked it. Don't lie to me. You liked it.
So just what? Just subscribe, okay? I'm a little guy with only like 4K guys. I need more guys.
Riz sound effect.